What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Blazers Uprise postgame show. Hopefully we're live, because last time I tried to go live, we completely lagged out. But hopefully we are here. I don't know how the internet's going to be. Unfortunately, dealt with internet issues the past few days. But we're going to try and recap this game. So the Blazers, after a 2-day layoff, take on the number one team in the Western Conference in the first of back-to-back games against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And they looked pretty dang good for 3 quarters. They were in this game until the fourth. And then the fourth was... It was Anthony Edwards and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, of all people, Eric going off against the Blazers. Anthony Edwards had a 40-point game. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 5 for 6 from 3. He went off, and the Blazers end up falling behind by almost 20 points, which didn't really do this game justice, because I thought, for the most part, this was a pretty well-played game on the Blazers side of things, going up against the best team in the West. And thank you guys for tuning in for the Blazers Uprise postgame show presented by BetUS. Eric, what's going on, man? It's been, a couple of days, of miserable days, unfortunately, for us Niner fans. But how you doing?
I'm all right. Yeah. What? Why are we pulling a lineman when we know the Chiefs are going to blitz? It's so stupid. But anyways, this game pretty much came down to a 6-minute stretch in the fourth quarter where the Blazers were outscored, I believe, 27-6, and went from a 2-point lead to down almost 20, like you said. And that was it.
Yep. Jevin, we brought up the Super Bowl, so it's fine. This is, I might wallow a time or two here on this post-game stream in the misery of being a Niners fan. It's been a rough past couple of days, to be quite honest with you, and then I've had a headache the past couple of days. I've been grieving, man. But happy to sit down with you guys and talk about a basketball game that, 80% of it, Eric, they played good, and 20% of it they played terribly, although some of it was Alexander Walker hitting contested threes, and the Minnesota Timberwolves just making plays. They've made plays all year. That's why they're the number one team in the West. So, end of the day, I'll take it. That's pretty good. You had some good scoop moments. DeAndre Ayton played great. Jeremy Grant had a solid game. So, a lot of good things from this game for it being a 12-point loss. It would have been a little bit different if they just kind of struggled behind 10 to 12 points the entire game. They were competitive, man, for 3 quarters of this game. Fought back in the third to tie the game and just got blitzed in the fourth.
Well, I mean, they were down 9 to 10 points most of the game, but just had a couple runs, and then it would get back up to 9 or 10, and then went on that run to take the lead. But, yeah, they were kind of in danger of that the first 3 quarters, I thought.
Yeah. Did I say Jeremy Grant solid game? I thought he shot better than that. 5 for 17 from him, not so solid. But yeah, I like that they continuously fought from behind in this game, continuously clawed their way back into this game, made it a game. Mm-hmm. The rookies tonight, Tamani and Scoot, both impressive. Tamani is 5 for 7, 2 for 2 from 3. He's starting to hit threes again, which is great. And then Scoot, 4 for 9. One of those was a heave. So I'm just going to say it's 4 for 8 because veterans wouldn't have shot that shot, 4 for 8, 1 for 1 without that heave from the 3-point line, 5 for 5 from the free throw line, 9 assists, 2 turnovers. I mean, he looked good, man. He looked good. He kind of ran out of gas there late, and it's become this thing with Scoot where he's had really good first halves. And part of the reason why I would lament us barely playing him in the second half when he had a good first half is I just wanted to see if he could put 2 halves together. And he did that first game in Denver. He's done that a couple of games here. But he just seems to run out of steam in the second half of some of these games where he just looks phenomenal in the first half. And then in the second half, doesn't really hit a shot. We'll still make a play off the dribble, maybe hit a shot here or there. But I think that's kind of where he's at right now is he can come into a game, especially coming off the bench right now as a rookie, and actually provide a spark, which is great. But it's just being able to sustain it for an entire game that's becoming the challenging part, and, that's to be expected with a rookie.
Yeah, and this, as Anthony's game showed us as well, it's tough to be a driving point guard when you're going up against Rudy Gobert, who completely controlled the paint in this game. Made a lot of shots very difficult, like he always does. Yeah, so I don't really blame Scoot for that. He had two of the more impressive passes I've seen him make this season, one in each half. One was a kind of a behind-the-back no-look pass to Jabari Walker for a lay-in, which is sweet. And then he had a really nice baseline drive dump-off pass to Ayton for a dunk. I thought he passed the ball really well. Would like to see him try and get more involved, and like you said, put two halves together. But yeah, it's not like he played terrible or anything in the second half.
Yeah, and he actually played. I mean, that's the thing, is to put two halves together. You got to play two halves in terms of minutes, So 34 minutes today for Scoot. I like that, especially without Brogdon. And I truthfully think he's ready to start from the standpoint of he can handle it, right? As far as Scoot's development, it's been a topic all season long. Don't want to throw him anything he can't handle, right? And starting at the start of the season was something that he couldn't handle. And that's what we wanted going into the season, but he struggled more, showed that he couldn't really handle it at the start of the season, so then I was okay bringing him off the bench. And bringing him off the bench has been a good thing. But at this point, he's playing well enough that I think he can handle starting. He's still going to have some struggles. He's still going to make some mistakes. There's still going to be some growing pains, but if he can handle those lumps, then he can grow from them. When he was struggling at the start of the year, that wasn't something that was going to help him grow, just starting off games getting devoured, demolished basically, just struggling, turnover after turnover at the start of the year. At this point, though, he's shown me enough. That's part of the reason why I wanted Brogdon traded at the deadline, was he's shown me enough where I am confident in his ability to start going forward, put together some good stretches, and then when he struggles, his ability to bounce back from them and his ability to learn from them and play through it. So I like that even though he kind of slowed down the second half, Chauncey still played him quite a bit because that's been one of my things with Chauncey is, if Scoot has a good first half, good stretch, don't just sub him out early in the second half and not play him again after he makes a couple of mistakes. So it wasn't really necessarily mistakes. It was more so missed shots, but I was happy that Chauncey just let him play through it. And there's a stretch there where Chauncey put him on Anthony Edwards, gave him that challenge, and let's be honest, nobody is stopping Anthony Edwards this year. He's been phenomenal. And, Scoot didn't stop him. But a lot of times it was Anthony Edwards working off screens. It wasn't just him isoing and hunting Scoot. And I like that Chauncey gave him that challenge there in the second half of guarding a guy like Anthony Edwards, because at this point, his growth is the most important thing, and challenging him, as long as he can handle it and handle any struggles that come with it, is a good thing.
Yeah, going back to Cronin's comments on Thursday, I feel like they're trying too hard to coddle him, and I don't think that's the right approach. I mean, it might end up being the right approach. I could be dead wrong. I don't think you have to protect every young player, to me, Scoot's the kind of guy who just needs to be out there learning on the job and not just sitting there or coming out of the game if he makes a mistake, like you mentioned. I'd rather just see him try to figure out how to put two halves together. Try to figure out how to mesh with Anthony in the lineup. Try to figure out how to stop someone like Anthony Edwards in live action instead of just watching film on it. And so I think even if he struggles this year, I do think it's better long term, and I do think that I do think he just needs to have the training wheels taken off like we did with Sharp at the end of last season. Yeah.
And Taylor Packer says, for me, it's not really a big deal if he comes off the bench. I just want to make sure he's getting sufficient minutes. The one thing I would like to see with him starting is him, start, play for a stretch, sub out, then come back in the first half, and then start the second half, sub out, come back in, and just see how he produces given the different substitution pattern for his minutes. Because right now it's just one stint from about 6 minutes on in the first quarter to, 6 minutes left or 4 minutes left in the second quarter. And then in the second half, it's kind of the same thing where it's just like 12 to 14 minute stretch for the most part. Maybe it's even longer if you get subbed in earlier. And at the end of those stretches, it's pretty easy to get gassed when you're playing that many minutes in a row. And his play for a lot of games has followed the same pattern where he's been good in the first half and then started struggling in the second half, or just maybe missing shots, maybe not having the same rhythm. So at this point, with how much I think he's improved this year, I'd be curious to see how he found a rhythm or maintained a rhythm throughout a game, if his substitution pattern was different, where he was starting and where he was basically playing in 4 different stretches instead of 2 during the course of the game. I'm not sure if he'll play better by any means, and obviously going against starters is tough, but that's something I'm curious to see. And to your point, what you said, Eric, there's a comment in chat from Randy Powell who said Scoot and Ant's net rating together is, I lost the comment, but basically like their net rating together isn't good, and that could be noise from the road trip, but it's not good. And that's where I would actually like to see them play as much together as possible right now, just to see if they can develop some chemistry and just figure out something about that pairing for the rest of the year. You're talking about a team that is now 15-38, right? So it's all about what can you learn for the future, what can you develop for the future, and that's one thing where I want to see those guys get a chance to play as many minutes as possible, develop chemistry, just to see what that looks like by the end of the year, because that could determine our thinking going into the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was because of foul trouble for Tamani. I'm not 100% sure, but Scoot yesterday comes in a minute and a half into the second half and gets to play with the starters for a good chunk of period. And we had Thybulle's the 3, Grant's the 4, and Ayton's the 5. So it's not like we had the 3-guard lineup. Some people might consider Thybulle a guard, but I don't know. He can play either. But it wasn't like a small lineup. It was like a normal size lineup. And I would really, I have to say that we wanted it to be the 3 guards, like Sharp included. But now that he's more than likely done for the year, there's no reason to not make the number one priority is get as much of a sample size of Scoot and Anthony playing together. And they have to figure things out. Like, you have to give them time to learn how to play with each other and learn how to deal with one of them having the ball and one of them playing off ball, or who's supposed to take the ball up, or who's supposed to run off a screen and all that kind of stuff. It takes time to gel. And so I think as much as you can get that out of the way this year, or maybe you come to the conclusion like it's just never going to work if you give it enough of a sample size. I think that's the number one priority for the rest of this year in my mind, is getting those two as acclimated with each other as possible.
Yeah, 100%. Like the way Scoot's been playing, he obviously looks more confident. That jab step and then drive left and laying at the rim he had looked quick, man. Like, he's starting to showcase his athleticism a little bit better at the NBA level. He's looking more like the dynamic athlete we saw in the G League, and it was kind of weird, he comes into the league, and you made comments about this, a lot of other people made comments about this, where his athleticism didn't seem like what it was in the G League once he got to the NBA level for the first half of his rookie season so far, but we've started to see it more and more. There's still times where he seems unsure of how to attack a shot blocker, where he struggles. He had a weird up and under layup where I think he should have just went strong with his left. Like, there's still definitely some nuance to learn for him, but I just like that he's just blowing by guys a little bit easier. And I've also started to notice guys are respecting his 3-point shot a little bit more. He got
fouled on that one.
Got fouled on one, and then that drive I'm talking about where he, jab stepped right and went left, that Lamar was talking about at length during this game. That play, the defender was up on him. That's why he was able to beat him. And that's the thing is as defenses continue to respect his 3-point shot more and more, It's going to be easier for him to blow by, get to the rim. The whole game's going to be easier for him. So the shooting development, I think, was the number one thing we were looking for after he starts 2 for 24 from 3. Since then, going into this game, was shooting 35.5% from 3, and then goes 1 for 2 tonight. His only miss was a heave, right? So he's shooting the 3 ball well enough to be respected. I want him shooting every time he's open, and you're starting to see defenses not just completely disrespect him beyond the 3-point line, especially once he makes one, because he makes one, they start respecting him, and then it opens up other things. So it's fun watching his evolution right now. It's fun watching him come into a game and have good moments, and it's kind of gotten to the point where I'm expecting him to do some good things when he gets into the game, which doesn't sound like I'm saying much, but it is compared to how we felt earlier in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I was most impressed of outside those couple passes I mentioned was, man, like, he hadn't really shown this too much. Like, he'd shown it in the G League, of course, but so far in the NBA hadn't really shown this. But he just, like, it's almost like he transports from one, like, when he has the ball, he's, like, at the 3-point line. Then all of a sudden he's, like, behind the defender and, like, in the lane, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, that's a special skill that you can't teach. And if he learns how to finish better, how to hit runners better, develop some sort of signature shot or some sort of move, I don't think it's quite big enough to do what you saw Anthony Edwards, like, almost become like a big man under the basket, where he, like, powers up and uses his strength to get to the backboard. But so I don't think he's quite big enough maybe to do that kind of stuff, maybe against smaller guards, but it just needs to develop some sort of go-to move while he's trying to figure out the rest of his game, and just work on that and just develop that, get that locked in, and then he can expand it more. But yeah, until he does that, he's still going to struggle, I think, finishing sometimes. But it's good to see him actually being able to get by defenders with relative ease.
Yeah, 100%. Leave a like on the stream. Let's get the stream to 100 likes. I think those Anthony Edwards moves, I don't know. He has that 6'9" wingspan. Apparently he's a legit 6'3". Like, I think some of that is, you know, just footwork. Anthony Edwards' footwork is phenomenal. You know, and that's a big reason why. He is a little bit bigger than Scoot, but you know, you see Jalen Brunson do some similar stuff, and he's more Scoot size. So that's just some more of the nuance, some more of the footwork things, some more of the fundamental stuff that Scoot will hopefully learn as he continues to grow and continues to age. Because if he can come to a stop in the lane and pivot and score off of that, then he becomes really dangerous. Mm-hmm. Then he becomes a problem. So, you know, that's something to look for probably next year. That's maybe something to work on in the offseason for him. I think he's done a good job focusing on what he needs to focus on. At the start of the year, it was just changing pace because he played way too sped up. And it was obviously a 3-point shot, and we've just seen tremendous growth in both those areas. And then it was like, okay, well, yes, you need to change pace, but also when you have the opportunity, you need to make use of that athleticism, because Scoot's not a guy that's going to be playing like Luka Doncic, right? The appeal is that he's really quick and a really good athlete. So finding that balance between being in control, being able to change pace, and then utilize that athleticism, that quickness, it's a balance between all three. And I think you're seeing him continue to find the right balance. And that's great, because that was the most important thing on top of knocking down threes, which he's been doing. So love the progression with him so far. Love the way he's playing. It's part of the reason why I wanted Brogdon traded and was willing to take back maybe less than other people, where I was saying I would just take any first whatsoever in any year. And it's because I want to see more Scoot. And it's funny because the conversation around it, and we're thought of as the negative guys, but the conversation around it was a lot of people saying, like, Scoot's not ready to play more minutes. Scoot's not ready for this, for that. It's going to be a disaster. Like, he's going to get destroyed and this and that. And it's like, man, have these people that are saying this not watched Scoot the last 10 to 15 games? Because he's improved as much in terms of his production and just how he looks, in my opinion, the last month as any other Blazer I've seen. Like, Sharp took that leap, but a big part of that leap came when they were tanking and he had like free reign, right? Scoot's still doing it coming off the bench in the same role that he's been playing for the better part of the season. So his improvement, is part of the reason why I wanted Brogdon gone. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle things when Brogdon comes back, if Scoot continues to play this well. But that's the number one storyline, I think, for the rest of the year, assuming that they're not going to shut down Brogdon anytime soon, is what's the minutes balance. Obviously how well Scoot plays, but if he plays well, what is the minutes balance between those two guys?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I've been looking at with Scoot is how much he's getting to the free throw line. So it's increased throughout the year. He barely got to the free throw line the first couple months. And then December, he gets to the line 42 times. January, 62 times. So much better job of creating fouls. Yeah. And we're only halfway through this month, and it's been weird with having a lot of days off, and then now they're going to have another week off. So total attempts might not be great for February. But I just think he's doing a much better job of getting to the line, and that will in turn improve his efficiency. So far in February, we know what I don't know what the shot attempts is, but with a certain minimum amount of shot attempts, he's last in the league in true shooting percentage. But this month so far, 56.5%, and I don't think that's going to go down tonight. So
yeah.
Right around league average ish.
Mm-hmm. And that true shooting percentage is crazy because he's shooting 35.5% from the field, 38.5% from three. So he's just struggling to finish from two. He's 5 for 13 from three. He's 6 for 18 from two. That's 33%. And that's the thing for him to really improve on going into next year, because I think, with his athleticism, his wingspan, his strength, like, he can be a good finisher. I just think that's something he has to work on. And if he can add that with the three-point shooting, with getting to the foul line, then all of a sudden he's a solidly efficient player, because he's been decently efficient this month because he's 17 for 18 from the free throw line. That's 94.4%. And he's getting to the line, this is just over 2 games. So 9 free throw attempts his last 2 games. This game, 5 for 5. So now he's 22 for 23 in the month of February in 3 games. Okay. So like small sample size, I'm talking about these percentages. It is only, a couple of games, but it's fascinating to watch him start to get calls that he wasn't getting earlier in the year. Mm-hmm. But also, talking about a dude who was struggling to shoot. He's been a good free throw shooter this year. He is at 81% going into this game. That's only going to rise. So at least he knocks down his free throws and is finding ways to get to the line, which I think he'll only get better at. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Love it. This is what I want to do with this post game. Let's bounce between positives and negatives. All right.
All right.
So, keep the people on their toes. I want to talk about, in my opinion, one of the biggest negatives lately, and that is Matisse Thybulle, whose three-point shot, Eric, is starting to fall off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Going into this game, he was 35.1%. I'll do the math, because Matisse, in this game, 19 minutes, 0 points. Okay? 0 for 5 from the field, and was 0 for 3 from 3. Which means he's shooting 66 for 191 from the three-point line, which is 34.6%. Which is basically kind of close to where he was in Philadelphia. He was shooting 33% when we traded for him. And he's trending towards that 33%. He's a career 34% three-point shooter. He comes into Portland after the trade last year, shoots 39% in 22 games. This year started off the season shooting hot. He is now, unfortunately, seeming to regress back to the caliber of shooter he was in Philadelphia.
I was waiting for my dog to finish drinking water.
You're fine.
Yeah, that's been one of the biggest disappointments over the last month or two, is just Thybulle going ice cold, and that's another reason why I thought we should look to move him at the deadline, because you could maybe still get some value. But now heading into the offseason, if it goes down even further, even if it's just like 34%, you don't have that to be like, see, we fixed his 3-point shot. So now it's going to be tough with this contract to get a ton of value. You just got to hope, I guess, in the offseason, a team like Dallas, once they become eligible to trade for him, still has interest in him or something, like we did with Alan Crabb, and do something there. But I mean, they don't really have a lot of assets anymore to trade, so that's going to be tough. But yeah, not really sure what they're doing with him, but they obviously are still pretty. I still think they like him and the organization, and think he's a big part of what they're trying to do.
If he's not shooting threes better than he has lately, he has, in my opinion, no value. Because all his value then comes from he gets steals and like occasionally will block a shot. But as I've said, that's only on like 5% of defensive possessions, right? And people say, oh, he's all defense though, so he has to be a great defender. But when we talk about all defensive defenders, normally we should be able to talk about them slowing down star players. I feel like we never talk about Matisse Thybulle slowing down a star perimeter player. And it's not that necessarily we're going to blame him for Anthony Edwards having 41 tonight, but I don't recall a single post-game show where we've sat there like, oh, look at this. An Anthony Edwards caliber player shot, 35% from the field, did not get going, and it was because of the defense Matisse Thybulle played on them. Like, we haven't sat here in a post-game show saying that, and we would if he did it. Like, I'm willing to give him credit. I was talking about, I gave him credit for his 3-point shot earlier this season, right? So we just never see him lock up anyone.
Yeah. Well, part of that I don't blame Thybulle for, because the Blazers, and it's been this way for years, but they get cross-matched up like worse than any team I've ever seen. Like, it's like always like the wrong person guarding. Like, Anthony's trying to guard Gobert inside or something, and then you got like Thybulle not on the primary ball handler, and then like I don't know, just so many times tonight. Even though Thybulle started on him, or Tamani was on him for the very beginning of the game, I thought Tamani, the first couple possessions, did a pretty good job. I feel like there's way too many possessions where it's not our primary defender on the ball, compared to like a lot of teams' game plans to find a way to keep your best defenders guarding the perimeter. You're muted if you're talking.
Yeah, no, I wasn't even talking. I was just thinking. I mean, agree with all that. Still, though, when he is guarding these guys, I feel like it's not noticeably great. I struggle with his place on this team, because it's very likely the Blazers are going to draft somebody that can play small forward with their pick or the Golden State pick. And you got Kamara, you got Grant playing 3, you got 4 guards right now. Like, there's just really no spot on this team for somebody like Thybulle. I think there's places in the league, some decent teams actually, that he could play some minutes and be okay. I just feel like, given the makeup of this team, to see him start struggling from 3 has me more and more convinced that going into next season, he shouldn't be a guy that's maybe on this roster, or at least in the rotation. Because I don't want it to be something where the Blazers, hypothetically, okay, there's just going to be a random hypothetical, let's say with the Warriors pick, they draft Dalton Connect, and they need shooting, right? So that guy can shoot the ball. I don't want it to be something where they draft that guy, he's NBA ready, but then he's not playing because you're playing Matisse Thybulle if he's going to be shooting 35% and not really making as big of a defensive impact as I would hope. So, it's kind of an evaluation period